Incredible revelation, Waitress's heartwarming act of kindness transforms Crippled Beggar into the diner smelled of fresh coffee and golden brown pancakes as the sun peeked through the windows, casting warm rays on the worn linoleum floor. Tables buzzed with laughter, families huddled together, and in the chaos, 23-year-old Sarah moved like a whirlwind, her dark ponytail swaying behind her. She was a picture of determination, balancing a tray laden with plates while burdened by the weight of her responsibilities. Her father, a decorated veteran, had fallen to the shadows of PTSD, leaving Sarah to keep her mom and younger siblings afloat. Each day she served bacon and eggs, hiding the ache in her heart behind a brave smile, knowing how much they depended on her. One chilly afternoon, as the laughter mingled with the clattering of dishes, Sarah's gaze landed on a stranger in the corner. Daniel. A beggar, his withered face told stories of failures and lost dreams. She had seen him sitting there more than a few times, his body still yet his spirit echoing resilience. Something about his quiet dignity drew her in. Their conversations, filled with hope amongst the hum of the diner, revealed Daniel's once bright dreams of becoming an artist, dreams crushed under a weight of circumstances he didn't choose. One day, an urgent health inspection loomed over the diner like a dark cloud, anxiety creeping into the air. The staff scrambled to keep everything in check while Sarah's thoughts drifted to Daniel. What could I do? She wondered, torn between her family's financial struggle and her loyalty to someone who deserved a second chance. That's when she had an idea. What if she introduced him to the diner's owner? Perhaps he could find hope again, rediscover the talent that was tragically lost. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a pounding heart, Sarah approached her boss, her nerves flaring like the sizzling patties on the grill. She had yet to weigh the risks of her choice when she spotted Daniel standing tall, courage flickering in his eyes. But just then, the door swung open. An old friend of his walked in, a shadow from the past who stirred up old memories buried deep within Daniel. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted, hope and fear danced in the air, tensions palpable. Sarah's heart raced as she glanced between them, realizing she had to make a choice. Should she fight for this man who represented so much potential, risking everything she worked for? Or comply with societal judgment, suffocating the spark she had helped bring to life in him? The diner buzzed with anticipation as time seemed to stretch, her heartbeat thudding like a drum against her ribs, waiting for her decision. What would she choose? And how would her choice change their worlds forever? Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she watched the old friend approach Daniel. He looked rough around the edges, with a familiar edge of bitterness shadowing his smile. "Danny! Is that really you?" He called out, his voice tinged with surprise and something else, disappointment. Before Daniel could respond, Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. Memories skewered Daniel's expression, his eyes flickering between recognition and dread. She saw the vulnerability beneath his weathered exterior, the same vulnerability she had felt when she looked at her own struggles each day. "You've got to be kidding me," the man said, chuckling darkly. "What happened to the bright-eyed kid with dreams of being an artist?" The diner became a stage for their reunion, conversations dwindling as nearby patrons shifted their focus. Sarah felt exposed, holding tightly to her tray as if it could offer her a shield. Daniel's shoulders slumped, and his eyes darted away, not wanting to revisit the past in front of a crowd. It was a scene unfolding too slowly, like a vehicle in a slow-motion accident. "Why are you here?" Daniel finally managed, but the pain in his voice was unmistakable. It twisted like a knife in Sarah's gut. She wanted to reach out for him, to remind him of the beauty he had within. But the moment hung heavy around them, smothering any warmth she had hoped to ignite. The old friend leaned in closer. "I heard you've fallen pretty low, man. First the art exhibit, then well, you know." The way he said it, with a chuckle as if mocking Daniel's fall, made Sarah's fists clench. Guess you didn't think you'd end up here, did you? Daniel remained silent, the weight of that judgment pressing down on him. Every eye in the diner felt like they were scrutinizing him, and Sarah could sense the stir of whispers. People loved a story of redemption, but they also loved to see how low someone could fall. This was how Sarah wanted Daniel's story to be told. In that moment, she made her choice. She stepped forward, her heart pounding louder than the clatter of cutlery. "Hey, mind your words," she said, her voice steady despite the tremors in her hands. "You don't know his story. You don't have the right to judge him." Every table turned, surprise bubbling in the air. She could feel Daniel's gaze on her, reflecting a mixture of gratitude and shock. "Sarah," Daniel murmured, trying to pull her back from the edge of confrontation. But she wouldn't have it. No one deserved to be crushed by someone else's past. Daniel's an artist. And there's still time for him to create something beautiful, she continued, daring him to believe. He just needs a chance. We all do. But the weight of her declaration had been set in motion, and the airy silence morphed into whispers around the diner. A mixture of admiration and confusion washed over the crowd, keeping everyone poised for what would come next. Did Daniel even want this chance? What lay ahead for him, under these renewed expectations? In that moment, Sarah wondered if they could both escape the stories written for them. All she could think was that sometimes, a small act of bravery could light a path for two souls lost in darkness. However, was she willing to risk her job for the glimmer of hope in Daniel's eyes? As Daniel stared back at her, his expression shifting from shock to something deeper, a flicker of hope, or was it fear? The stirring tension thickened the air between them. What would he say? How would his response define their destinies? In a hush that felt like a turning point, Sarah awaited his answer, sensing that everything was about to change. Would Daniel step forward into the light she was desperately trying to throw his way, or would he retreat back into his shadows? The diner held its breath, waiting for one simple word to signal what would come next. Daniel's gaze dropped to the floor as if the ground might swallow him whole. The diner seemed to close in around them, the air thick and charged, filled with expectation. Sarah could feel every heartbeat drumming in her ears, a symphony of hope and fear intertwining. What if he didn't want her help? What if he felt too broken to believe in anything more than what he had become? "Sarah," Daniel finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, and she saw a flicker of something. Was it desire? Fear? Confusion? "You shouldn't have done that, not for me." "Why not?" She shot back, determination flaring within her. "You deserve someone to stand up for you. I know you're in there, Daniel. The artist, the dreamer. Don't let him drown in this darkness." Her hands trembled at her sides, a cocktail of fury and compassion bubbling inside her. "Maybe I like the darkness," he replied, the bitterness creeping back into his tone. The truth hung heavy between them, an unwelcome weight that threatened to drag his spirit back into a chasm. "It's safer. It doesn't disappoint." The friends nearby erupted with low murmurs, caught between the raw emotion of the moment and the spectacle of the diner that had become their stage. A stranger shook her head in disapproval, while a man at the counter shifted uncomfortably in his seat. They were witnessing a battle of the heart, one that felt like a storm brewing. "Safe?" Sarah echoed, her voice steadying, refusing to buckle. "You think hiding will protect you? You're so much more than what you think you are. You can create, all you need is to believe it again." Time slowed, her words hanging in the air, swirling around Daniel like a tender breeze fighting against a brewing tempest. Just when Sarah thought he might let go, he inhaled deeply, his chest rising and falling as if the act itself demanded courage. "What if I can't? What if I fail again?" he murmured, a hint of desperation creeping into his voice. She noticed the glimmer of vulnerability in his expression, the fight against letting the past dictate who he could become. "Then you try again," she said, forcing a small smile. Isn't that what life is about? Falling and getting back up. Seek out the beauty in you. Art isn't just for when you feel perfect, it's born from struggle, from your scars. It's real. A silence followed her words, heavy and tangible, as if everyone in the diner were leaning in, holding their breath. The old friend seemed taken aback, his expression shifting. Maybe it dawned on him that this was bigger than his judgment, bigger than Daniel, even. Look, I get it, Daniel finally said, his voice cracking ever so slightly. But it's not that easy. He dropped his gaze again, either shame or something deeper washing over him. I know it isn't, Sarah replied, her heart racing as she fought against her own doubts. But you have to start somewhere. Just take that first step. Art is born from darkness, too. Don't run away from what makes you real. Let it fuel you. At that very moment, something shifted in Daniel's eyes. There was a glimmer, a small flame igniting beneath the layers of hurt. It flickered against the backdrop of vulnerability and despair. Was it hope? He began, uncertainty dancing in his voice like a hesitant flame. Maybe, but just then, the door to the diner rattled open, interrupting their moment. The brightness of the sun spilled into the room, washing over Daniel, illuminating his face. People turned their heads, and just like that, the fleeting silence shattered. Yet, Sarah couldn't shake the sudden sense that Daniel's life was at a precipice. From the entrance, a figure stepped inside, grimy, unkempt, but familiar. It was someone from Daniel's past. The weight of recognition hit him like a wave crashing down. She could see it in his expression, the fear blossomed again. Daniel! The newcomer boomed, excitement laced with something more ominous. I've been looking for you. The diner buzzed back to life, and all attention turned to the encroaching storm, casting shadows on Daniel's tentative hope. How? Would this invasion alter their moment? What would it mean for Daniel's choice? As that familiar face moved toward them, Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The answer did not seem so clear anymore. Would Daniel step forward into the light, or would the shadows reclaim him once more? Daniel's body stiffened at the sound of that voice. It was a voice he thought he had buried with his past. A part of him wanted to shrink back, to disappear into the booth he sat in, while another part, perhaps the part Sarah had just ignited, flared with unwilling curiosity. He turned slowly, facing the person he had avoided for so long. Victor, he breathed, the name tasting bitter on his tongue, a reminder of the life he once had and the dreams that had slipped through his fingers. Victor stood tall, his hair disheveled and his clothes hanging off his frame, but there was a spark in his eye, something that reminded Daniel of the boy he once knew. You've changed, man. Look at you. Victor beamed, his smile all too wide. I didn't think I'd find you here, of all places. The diner's atmosphere shifted again. People turned back to their food or drinks, but the weight of history hung between them, dense and suffocating. Sarah's gaze darted between the two men, trying to gauge Daniel's reaction. She felt the energy shift from hope-light to the brooding storm that Daniel had admitted to favoring. What do you want? Daniel's words came out sharper than he intended, but he couldn't mask the tremor behind the bravado. I want to talk, Victor said, casual and unassuming, but his eyes flicked to Sarah, sensing the tension that spiraled like a coiled spring. It's been a long time. Too long. I need you back, man. We could get the old crew together. The mention of the old crew sparked memories, some good, others haunting. Daniel felt a flutter of panic rising in his chest. The urge to escape was nearly overwhelming, but he felt Sarah's steady presence beside him. You don't understand, he said, his voice softening despite himself, drawn back into a conversation he didn't want but felt powerless to escape. That life isn't me anymore. Victor raised an eyebrow, his expression shifting. Is that what you think? That it's gone for good? There was a challenge in his tone. You're still that same guy, Daniel. We can help each other. Get you back on your feet. Daniel felt the crowd's eyes on them, the weight of judgment pressing down. He glanced at Sarah. Did she hear the desperation? The glimmer of possibility? "I found something else," he said, though the words were soft, almost unconvincing. "I'm not that person anymore." "Then what is she?" "Your little cheerleader." Victor jerked his head toward Sarah, who met his gaze unabashedly. "This isn't a game," she interjected, her voice firm but steady. "Daniel deserves better than to be pulled back into whatever cycle you want him to return to. This isn't about escaping into the past, it's about finding a future." The silence that followed was deafening. They all felt it, the weight of decisions hanging in the balance. Daniel's heart raced with the realization of what he might lose if he ignored the pull of Victor's words. Yet, Sarah's faith still glimmered in the corner of his mind, urging him to see the beauty he could create. Daniel turned back to Victor. "You don't get it. I can't go back. I won T." The flicker of frustration crossed Victor's face. "You think you're better than us now? Living life like it's all sunshine and rainbows? You don't know what we're capable of." The words hung in the air, filled with resentment and envy. The old crew's carefree laughter had turned into daggers, sharp and unforgiving. Suddenly, Daniel saw more than just the man standing before him. He saw the mirror of his own fears, his own potential for destruction. Did he want to let that darkness back in? "What happens if I choose to stay?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. Victor smiled, but it was a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You say you found light, but the shadows will always come creeping back. Just remember, you can't escape who you really are." The conversation left a bitter taste in Daniel's mouth, a familiar ache he thought he'd conquered. As Victor continued to talk, Sarah's soft hand found Daniel's, a simple gesture of solidarity. That touch felt like a lifeline, grounding him amidst a rising tide of doubt. "Will you let the shadows win?" she whispered, her eyes searching his. Daniel hesitated, caught between the future Sarah offered and the temptation of who he used to be. The weight of choices loomed like dark clouds overhead, threatening to break into a storm, and then, amid the churning chaos, Daniel felt inside him the spark of a decision waiting to ignite. What path would he choose, and would it lead to light or darkness? Daniel's world felt like it was crumbling around him, the walls closing in with Victor's words echoing in his ears. The diner was a blur, faded colors and muted voices fading into the backdrop of his thoughts. He wanted to breathe deeply, to find clarity, but the closer he looked at Victor's eager face, the tighter his chest felt. "What's stopping you?" Victor leaned in, his tone dipping into darker waters. "Fear of what we could do together. We were unstoppable. Or maybe I've seen the other side and I don't like what I found," Daniel shot back, his voice firmer now but still rattling with tension. It felt good to stand up, to say something that echoed the truth brimming in his heart, the truth Sarah had helped him find. "Come on, it can't be all sunshine and rainbows," Victor shook his head, dismissing the notion. "You think you can outrun it forever? You think she can really give you what you need?" Sarah's grip on Daniel's hand tightened, her presence anchoring him. "You only know one side of him," she said, her gaze unwavering. "You have no idea what he is capable of now. And you must know that every shining moment can't come without darkness lingering sometimes. But it doesn't mean we are defined by it." "You think you're keeping him from the real world," Victor said, laughter dancing uncomfortably in his voice, "but it's out there, waiting for him. And when it comes, that safety net disappears. You can't protect him forever." "Maybe the point isn't protection, Victor," Sarah replied, her voice slicing through the tension. "It's about living fully. The fear doesn't go away, but so what? What matters is how we choose to face it." It was as if the very air around them shifted. Daniel felt the weight of realization pressing on his chest, both exhilarating and terrifying. He glanced sideways at Sarah, her eyes sparkling not just with faith but with a fierce determination he had never seen before. In that moment, he knew that the shadows weren't just creeping back, they were here already, but they didn't have to win. Daniel's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. "Victor, I don't want to go back. I want to step forward with her. Not with whatever you're offering. Victor raised his hands in surrender, though the grin on his face still managed to infuriate Daniel. All right, but don't say I didn't warn you. It's a mistake to think you can choose which parts of yourself to keep. And with that, the confrontation started slipping away, the distance growing like a cold wind hugging the diner's edges. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, the weight of Victor's words lingering in his mind. What if he was right? What if the shadows were stronger than the light? As Sarah wrapped her fingers around his, she seemed to intuit his inner turmoil. You're not choosing between light and darkness, she murmured, kindness weaving into her voice. It's more about learning to embrace both. All pieces of you. All of your journey. Daniel looked at her, their eyes locking in a moment that felt monumental over the clamor of the diner. Hope surged through him, stronger than ever. Letting out a long breath, another wave of calm settled over him. Let us take the next step together, he breathed, more to himself than to her. It felt raw, unpolished, but it was the truth he had been searching for, an electrifying leap of faith. Victor's playful facade cracked, revealing impatience tinged with bitterness. The world doesn't wait. You'll see everything you've tried to run from will be waiting at the door. The thought curled at the edges of Daniel's mind, but in that moment, with Sarah beside him, they would figure it out together. Let it come, Daniel finally said, his voice steady, as strong as the bond he felt with Sarah. We'll face it as we are. Together. Every shadow and every light. The meal around them continued, laughter rumbled through the diner, but it all faded into the background. Daniel felt a different kind of noise beginning to stir, a blend of uncertainty and excitement welcoming him into a new future. With a smirk, Victor stepped back as if to dismiss them. Good luck then. Daniel. You'll need it. The words lingered as Victor left the booth and walked toward the door, but Daniel felt a spark of determination ignite within him. Perhaps it was only the beginning. As the door swung shut, Daniel turned to Sarah. What now? Her smile broadened, bright against the shadows lurking beyond. Now we keep moving. Together. But as they spoke, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were only gathering strength outside, waiting for a chance to return. Daniel looked into Sarah's eyes, feeling both exhilarated and fearful. The weight of Victor's parting words lingered like a shadow, the uncertainty hanging in the air between them. Together, he repeated, almost as if testing the word. The idea wrapped around him like a warm blanket, but he couldn't help feeling like a storm was brewing just outside their happy cocoon. What's next? He asked, his voice low, the thrill of possibility clashing with the reality of those shadows. I mean, can we just go on living like this? Won't they follow us? Won't they pull us back? Sarah squeezed his hand tighter. It won't be easy, but running won't help. We stand our ground and move forward. I'll be right here with you. Across the diner, a bell chimed softly as a group of kids burst in, laughter peppering the air, their carefree joy infectious. Daniel watched them, a twinge of longing surging within him. He missed that sense of freedom, that worrylessness. Do you think we'll ever feel that light again? He asked, not entirely sure if he was speaking about the kids or about himself. Sarah's expression softened as she turned her head towards him, her brow furrowing. Of course, we will. But we have to learn to carry the darkness. The light doesn't erase it, it just balances it. Like a dance. A dance? Daniel repeated, puzzled but intrigued. Yeah, she said, her eyes brightening. Life's like that, right? Sometimes you twirl and sometimes you dip. You might hit a few off notes, but you keep moving. We learn from every step, from every fall, and that includes the shadows. A smile broke through his concern, shifting his mood. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it felt right. Then let us start this dance, he said, emboldened. He could almost hear the music playing in the background. Great idea. But first, let us order something celebrate this moment. Her enthusiasm was like a ray of sunshine cutting through the lingering clouds. As they glanced at the menu, Daniel felt a flicker of gratitude for the little moments that could ground him: the warmth of coffee cups, the laughter of friends, the small kindness of strangers serving food. He would embrace that. He caught a glimpse of Victor through the diner's window, lingering just outside. Their gazes met for a heartbeat, and in that instant, Daniel felt the familiar twinge of doubt. Would Victor really let him go so easily? The dark undertow still tugged at the edge of his heart. "Hey," Sarah whispered, catching his attention. "Focus on us. He doesn't define your path." Daniel nodded, forcing a smile, and as the waitress approached, he ordered 2 milkshakes, feeling that sense of normalcy wash over him. As they chatted about silly things, the heartache slipped away bit by bit, like the melting ice in his glass. But deep down, a question nagged at him. What if we're not ready for what's out there? What if it pulls us back into old habits? Then we adjust, Sarah replied simply. Just like we're doing now. We keep talking, keep trusting, and we lean on each other. Remember, you're not just you anymore, you're a team. The reassurance in her voice spurred something inside him. This was new territory, a new dance. But just as he started to settle into the rhythm, something flickered in the corner of his eye. The door swung open again, and in walked a familiar face, one he hadn't seen in years. Daniel's heart dropped. "What the hell?" he muttered, the words escaping him before he could really think it through. "Daniel?" Sarah asked, glancing over her shoulder. Her expression contorted into worry as she sensed the tension in him. "Just give me a second." His gut twisted as he prepared for whatever confrontation lay ahead. He hadn't realized until now that the distance from the past was much smaller than he thought. With that unexpected visitor now in the diner, Daniel's world felt like it was about to shift again. Would he be able to stand his ground against this new wave of shadows? Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Daniel's breath hitched in his throat as he stared at the familiar face. It was Mark, a friend from his past who had drifted away amid personal struggles. Mark's eyes scanned the diner, landing on Daniel with both surprise and an unspoken need for connection. "Hey man," he called out, his voice cutting through the din. The lively chatter around them seemed to fade into the background. "Mark," Daniel managed, his heart racing. Memories began flooding back, their late-night talks, shared dreams, and the descent that had pulled them apart. Daniel felt an intricate web of emotions unspooling inside him, a mix of anger, confusion, and a flicker of nostalgia. Sarah's grip on his hand tightened as she sensed the unease wash over him. "Do you want to talk to him?" she whispered, her voice steady and calm. Taking a deep breath, Daniel nodded. "Yeah. I think I have to." With careful steps, he approached the table where Mark stood, a blend of reluctance and curiosity bubbling inside him. The diner felt warmer now, the colors around him brighter. But that warmth competed with the chill of uncertainty. "It's been a while," Daniel said, trying to mask the shifting emotions within him. "Too long," Mark replied, scratching the back of his head. He looked tired, worn down, like someone who'd fought their way through too many battles. I didn't expect to see you here. I just got back to town." Daniel glanced back at Sarah, who stood just a few steps away, watching intently. He turned his focus back onto Mark. "What happened to you?" "I tried calling." Mark's eyes clouded, and for a moment, it felt like the weight of the past lingered heavily between them. "I got caught up in some things. Lost my way, I guess," he confessed quietly, shame piercing his tone. "I've been trying to fix it one day at a time." Daniel could see the flicker of hope and struggle in Mark's eyes. The shadows were there, but so was a resilient ember waiting to be reignited. "How are you doing?" Mark asked, genuinely curious. "Better, I think." "I'm trying to be better," Daniel answered, glancing sideways at Sarah. "I'm with someone who helps me stay grounded." "That's good," Mark replied, his expression softening. "I'm really glad to hear that. You always had a good heart, Daniel. A brief silence hung between them, a pause filled with unsaid words. Just then, an unexpected cheer erupted from a nearby table where the kids had started a playful food fight. Laughter bubbled over, cutting through the tension. Daniel chuckled despite himself. Things never change, huh? Mark laughed too, a sound that felt distant yet familiar. Suddenly, a pang of guilt swept over Daniel. Here stood a man who had once been his friend but had wandered into dangerous waters. Could he really mend that bridge? Listen, I'd love to catch up, maybe grab a cup of coffee or something later. Daniel offered, feeling the smile stretch across his lips. Really? I'd like that, Mark responded, the surprise evident in his eyes. As they exchanged numbers, Daniel felt Sarah move closer to him, offering an affirming smile. Maybe he wasn't the only one ready to embrace second chances. Just take it slow, okay? She whispered. You don't have to dive in head first. Yeah, I know, he replied softly, glancing back to see Mark standing there, hope tinged with trepidation. I'll call you, Mark vowed, his gaze sincere. Let us get through this together. Daniel felt a flicker of warmth rise in his chest. This was a chance not just for Mark but for him too. In that moment, the storm of uncertainty shifted slightly, revealing a sliver of light. But as they returned to their table, Sarah's face clouded over again, drawing Daniel's attention back. What now? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel turned to see Victor still lingering outside, his expression dark and unforgiving. I don't know, he replied, the weight of the past threatening to pull him under. The air felt heavy with premonitions. Would Victor intervene now, or would he let Daniel walk away? Because even though light was breaking through, shadows remained ready to follow. Daniel's heart raced as he locked eyes with Victor. The man outside the diner seemed like a specter from his past, one Daniel had worked hard to bury under layers of progress and newfound hope. He could feel the tension thickening in the air, a grim reminder of battles not yet fought. What is he doing here? Sarah's whisper was laced with concern. I don't know, Daniel replied, his stomach churning as Victor shifted his weight, casting a long shadow against the diner's illuminated windows. Victor had always been intimidating, but now, with his face hardened and his hands in his pockets, he radiated an unsettling energy. Stay close to me, Sarah urged, moving slightly in front of Daniel. Her protective stance was valued, but Daniel felt a rush of conflicted emotions. He wasn't a child and didn't want to hide behind anyone. Gathering his courage, Daniel took a step forward, his resolve hardening like steel. I'm going to talk to him. Are you sure? He doesn't seem like he's in a good place, Sarah warned, her eyes flickering with worry. I need to face this. I can't let him win. As he walked outside, the cold air hit Daniel's face, amplifying the intensity of the moment. Victor's eyes narrowed, and Daniel braced himself for whatever confrontation awaited. Daniel, Victor greeted, his voice low and chilling. Fancy seeing you here, looking all clean. There was contempt in his tone, and a wave of old feelings washed over Daniel: fear, anger, and a strange twinge of sadness for the boyhood friendship that had crumbled. Victor, Daniel replied, his voice steadier than he felt. What do you want? I just wanted to see how life's treating you. Heard you've been telling people you found your better self or whatever. Whatever you think, I'm not playing your games anymore. Victor crossed his arms, a smirk emerging. Playing games? I'm just curious. Last I checked, you shook my world up pretty good. Are you really up for this? Up for what? Daniel asked, genuinely confused. Coming clean, Daniel, Victor shot back, his eyes narrowing. Because let's be honest, you have some skeletons in your closet too. Everyone does. You really think you can just ignore that and walk into the sunset holding hands with your pretty little girlfriend? Daniel's chest tightened. Memories flooded back, the nights filled with wild partying and reckless decisions, the things he thought he'd left behind. I've changed, Victor. Changed? Sure, let us say that. But this better version of you? I doubt it could withstand the reality of what you've covered up. What happens when I say the wrong thing? What happens when I remind you of who you used to be? That hit Daniel harder than he expected, but instead of backing down, he straightened his shoulders. You don't control me anymore. You need to leave me alone. Victor leaned in close, the old intimidation swirling in the air between them. We'll see if your new world can handle the truth. A surge of anger coursed through Daniel. But before he could respond, Sarah emerged behind him, her voice firm. You need to go, Victor. You're not welcome here. Victor glanced at her, assessing the newfound strength in Daniel's life, and then laughed softly. Enjoy your little fairy tale then. It won't last. With that, he turned and strode down the street, blending into the growing shadows as the diner buzzed with laughter and conversation behind them. Daniel stood still for a moment, his heart pounding. What was that? Sarah asked, looking up at him, her gaze searching his for answers. Just a reminder that I'm still running from parts of myself, he admitted, feeling raw. Then let us face it together, she replied softly, squeezing his hand. But even as he felt comfort in her words, dread twisted in Daniel's stomach. The shadows were lurking still, and Victor's words echoed hauntingly in the back of his mind. What truths was Victor prepared to unleash? And more importantly, could Daniel stay strong against it all? A flicker of uncertainty hung in the air, the battle not yet over as they turned back toward the warmth of the diner. The evening was far from resolved. As Daniel and Sarah stepped back into the diner, a wave of warmth enveloped them. Laughter bubbled around them, but Daniel felt like an outsider, trapped in a fog of unease. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass panel. His face looked pale, the shadows of past mistakes darkening his features. Let us sit down, Sarah suggested, leading him toward a booth in the far corner. The diner was alive with activity, families enjoying their meals, couples sharing smiles over plates of fries. But the joy felt distant, muffled, like trying to hear a song through a closed door. Do you think he'll come back? Daniel asked, his mind racing. Victor's words replayed in his head, the implications lingering like an unwanted guest. I don't know, but we can't let him ruin our night, Sarah stated with a firmness that drew Daniel's focus back to her. Her eyes were steady, shining with an unwavering light that gave him a glimmer of hope. You're stronger than you think. Don't let him take that from you. Easier said than done, Daniel muttered, tracing the rim of his glass with his finger. But a flicker of determination ignited inside him. He thought about how far he'd come since those dark days, the choices he made, the people that supported him. Just then, the waitress, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a soft smile, approached their table. What can I get you two? She asked, her voice brightening the atmosphere. I'll have a burger, please, Sarah replied, her smile breaking through the tension. Same for me, Daniel added, forcing a smile as he looked back at the woman. There was something comforting in her presence, a reminder that not everyone in his life was connection tangled with shadows. Great choice. She jotted down their orders and paused, looking at Daniel with a sparkle of concern. You okay, hon? You look like you've been carrying the weight of the world. Daniel hesitated. There was something so genuine in her question, something about the sincerity wrapped in her soft tone that broke through his defenses. I'm dealing with some stuff, he admitted, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. The waitress nodded understandingly. Sometimes it helps to share what's on your mind, she said. You'd be surprised at how talking things out can lighten that load. Yeah, maybe, he replied, feeling unexpected warmth from her simple act of kindness. Just as she turned to leave, a deep hush fell over the diner. Daniel glanced over to see Victor silhouetted in the entryway, a dark figure against the bright lights inside. His eyes flicked around the room, landing on Daniel with a predatory focus. Daniel's throat tightened. Damn it, Sarah whispered, her grip on his hand tightening. Victor moved forward, his expression unreadable, yet menacing. The laughter and chatter resumed, thickening around them, but Daniel felt exposed, like every pair of eyes was drawn to the impending storm. "I thought I told you to enjoy your little fairy tale," Victor sneered, now standing right beside their booth. "For the last time, Victor, leave us alone," Sarah shouted, her voice rising above the din. Daniel felt a rush of gratitude for her strength but also fear at the confrontation escalating in front of so many eyes. Suddenly, he was back in the past, reliving the chaos and the fear, and it terrified him. "Careful, you two," Victor warned, leaning in closer. "It's a fragile thing, this happiness you've built together." Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but a sudden realization struck him, one powerful enough to break through the fear wrapping him tight. "You're right," he said, his voice ringing out, louder than he expected. "It is fragile. It's something I want to protect." Victor's eyes flared with surprise, a brief crack in his demeanor. The waitress returned then, holding their plates of steaming burgers and fries. "Is everything all right over here?" she asked, concern etched on her face. Daniel's mind raced. "You know what? It's more than all right," he said, holding her gaze. For the first time since stepping out, he felt a sliver of control. "Because I'm done letting him dictate my life." Victor's expression darkened, boiling anger simmering beneath the surface. As tension coiled tighter, Daniel felt something shift within him. The moment hung heavy, fraught with potential as he prepared to stand his ground. But could he really confront Victor without unraveling everything he had fought so hard to build? What would it take to cleanse the past? And what if this confrontation pushed him further than he was ready to go? The air around them thickened with expectation, waiting for the next move to be made. Daniel's heart raced, the friction between courage and fear igniting. The diner felt suspended in time, each eye watching what would unfold. A thick tension clung to the air as he looked past Victor and saw the simple joys being shared, families bonding over meals, kids laughing, warmth radiating from those tiny corners of happiness. That he took a deep breath, summoning the strength he had found in Sarah's unwavering support. "I'm ready to face my past," he declared, his voice trembling yet filled with conviction. "I won't let it control me anymore. You might think you hold power over me, but you're wrong." Victor narrowed his gaze, his eyes flashing with disbelief and a flicker of something else, fear. "You think you can just erase what you've done? The people you've hurt?" "He's not erasing anything," Sarah interjected fiercely, standing beside Daniel and facing Victor head-on. "He's learning to embrace it. Change is real, and it's strong. You might have known him in the dark, but you don't know the man he is now." The whispers around them grew louder, the crowd absorbing the intensity of the scene. Eyes widened, some filled with admiration, others with judgment. But Daniel felt a rush of empowerment surging from their energy. This was not just his battle, it was one they were all witnessing. "He's trying," Sarah continued, her voice cracking slightly, betraying her oath to bravery. "We all have shadows, but it doesn't mean we're stuck. He's fighting every single day to become better, and you can't take that away from him." Daniel's throat felt raw, but there was a flicker of light breaking through the cobwebs of doubt. "You're right," he said to Victor, surprising even himself. "I am flawed. I do have a past filled with mistakes. But it doesn't define me anymore. I choose to be better." His words resonated across the diner. Sarah's eyes sparkled with tears, a mixture of pride and tenderness flooding her gaze. She knew he was truly ready to confront his ghosts. Victor's smirk faded, replaced by an anger that seethed just below the surface. "You'll see," he hissed. "No one can run from who they are." "Maybe you can't," Daniel shot back, feeling the shadows start to lift. "But I'm not bound by your rules or your perceptions. I'm creating my own path." As the weight of his declaration settled, Daniel felt an unfamiliar yet robust rush of empowerment wash over him. He wasn't just standing up to Victor, he was also laying bare the resolve he had discovered. "Every time I stumble, I'll get back up," Daniel said, locking eyes with Victor, his heart pounding in his chest. And that is something you'll never understand. The diner buzzed around them, the walls echoing with a collective realization: Daniel had become more than his past. The moment felt like a pivotal chapter closing in front of the engaged community that had witnessed his growth. Victor backed off, momentarily caught off guard. But anger twisted his features, a mix of disbelief and resentment, the very part of himself from which he couldn't escape. This isn't over, he sneered, but already his power was waning. Maybe not, Sarah interjected confidently, taking Daniel's hand. But you know what? We are ready for whatever comes next. As Victor stormed out of the diner, the tension released from Daniel's shoulders just as a hot wave of sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the space. People began to clap, murmurs buzzing with encouragement breaking through the silence. Daniel and Sarah exchanged glances, hearts racing, but this time for different reasons entirely: hope, courage, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Together, Daniel whispered, guiding Sarah back toward their booth. We can face our shadows, but we have to step forward. One step at a time. I can do this with you, Sarah said, a radiant smile blooming on her lips. We're on this dance together now. Just keep focused. In that moment, surrounded by the warm bustle of the diner and the light of a new day, Daniel felt free. The journey had only just begun, but he was no longer trapped in the silence of his past. Together, they would embrace the shadows and the light, a beautiful tapestry woven with the threads of resilience, hope, and the boundless possibilities of a future yet to unfold. And as they shared a milkshake at their booth, laughter echoed around them, piercing through the twilight of shadows and lighting the way for both of their hearts to take flight. If you're inspired by this journey of courage and transformation, subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to fuel this movement and help it reach others who need this message. Comment your reflections on this ending. How did it touch you? And don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans know how important it is to support the channel through these actions.